Hello, and in this video we're going to be learning about private and serialized field variables. Okay, and a quick little change. I've been meaning to switch to a different IDE for a while, Visual Studio Code. So I've made the change, and you guys can still use whatever IDE you're still using. And the setup process for Visual Studio Code is slightly longer. I'll leave a few links in the description if you want to change them. Alright, why is this here? Okay, you should have seen that. Alright, so I've just cleared out all of the code that we have previously written, and I'm gonna replace it with some new code. And in this one, I hope you remember the concept of variables, just containers. Like I can create a float. Let me give it a meaningful name this time. I'll call it speed, because in this video we're going to be doing something a tad bit more than what you would expect. So speed, and I will default this at 2000. It's 3000f 3000, sorry. And I've created a variable. It's not being used anywhere, but it's there. And if I come back into Unity, maybe let's say there's a few variables that you want to be able to fine tune depending on its value. And another thing, I've deleted the script manager. I've disabled it, and I have dragged on this script onto my sphere. And I think it's about time I rename the sphere to something more meaningful, like player. Alright, so now when I drag this script onto this player, what happens is this script has access to all of this game object's components, like its transform, its rigid body, etc. And that's why I've dragged it on here. Alright, so speed is something that you would like to be fine-tuned, because you want to be able to tweak it depending on the game. And currently, anytime you want to tweak it, you have to come into the code, you have to change its value here, go back, wait for it to compile, and then hit play once again. And that's just a little bit extra. And today in this video, I'm going to be showing you how people work around that. And it's not exactly a workaround, something Unity provides built in. So there are two types. There's a serialized field. It's an attribute. Now anything between curly braces is an attribute. And serialized fields and public. Now let me just show you both of them in action. So what I'm going to do is, just before I declare a variable, I'm going to serialize field this variable, and serialize fields float speed. Now when I save and head back in here, now when I click on the player and look at its script, now you can see that the speed is available for us to tweak in the inspector. I can change it up. It's very precisely, or I can just type in whatever values I would like, but let me leave it at 2000. And that is one way you can make a variable exposed in the inspector. And what I mean by exposed is available in the inspector, so you can go ahead and change its values. And there's another way as well, and I'll explain to you the difference between both the ways. Instead of having an attribute serialized field, I can make this float public. Now when I go back, I think there's a little line issue. It doesn't matter, but still OCD. Now it's the same result. Let me go back into the player. It has the same result. Its speed is still available in the inspector for you to go ahead and change. But let me explain the difference. Alright, so public makes the variable public, which gives you two advantages. It makes it available in the inspector, and other scripts can go ahead and access this variable and change it in their own code. So let's say you want to change the speed on two different scripts. Like maybe you want to change it in this script, maybe you want to change it in another script. Then you can make it public and you can access this variable directly from another script. And what SerializeField does, SerializeField, is it makes the variable exposed in the inspector, and it makes sure that the variable is private. And what I mean by private, well, if I just put private in front here, private means that this variable is only accessible in this script and cannot be accessed anywhere else. So I like to use SerializeField, and directly after SerializeField, I like to put private. So SerializeField private float speed 3000, and should give the same result, right? I think it did give the same result. Yes, it did. Alright, now what I'm gonna do is if you read the description in my previous video, you would remember that not all types can be float, string, integer, etc., vector 3, which we don't need to worry about right now. There can also be components as variables. So I can create a component. So I can SerializeField private, and any component that has to do with physics, forces, if you remember, is a rigid body. Now you're probably wondering, why are you wanting to access this rigid body? So I'm gonna say we want to do something with that rigid body in our code, and that's exactly what we're gonna do. So SerializeField private rigid body, you can give it whatever name you like. I usually just like to go by RB. And I'm not gonna set this variable to anything just yet. When I hit save, you can come back into your script whenever it takes its merry time to load. Yeah, and now you can see that we have access to a rigid body, which we have not defined yet. So it's currently saying none rigid body, which is basically saying there's nothing here, and in between the parentheses comes the type. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drag in the rigid body from this component, the player. I'm gonna drag it in, and now our script has access to everything that this rigid body has to offer. And I will be going through the thing that we will be wanting the most. Alright, now as a challenge for you, if you remember in my video input in Unity, I want you to create the update method and make an if statement that every frame you want to check if the W key was pressed. Alright, let's see if you can do that. Alright, and if you couldn't do it, you can just follow along with me. So I'm going to create a private void update, and again, private just means that you cannot access this function anywhere else. And private void update, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if keyboard dot current dot W key dot was pressed this frame, and you can add whatever you want here. But I'm gonna show you how you can access a variable that you have defined. So I want to add a force onto my rigid body. So let me just explain it to you. You're probably wondering which direction the force will be added to. It can't just be some random direction, right? So I'm gonna zoom in onto my player, and if you forgot how to do that, double click on the game object you want to focus in on the hierarchy. And I want my player to move forward. I want him to move this way. So I want him to move, if my camera is looking at him from the back, so if I select my camera, the camera is looking at him from the back. And just remember, the forward axis in Unity, the axis that you use if you want something to move in front, is the z-axis, the blue line. So let me click on my player. I want him to move on the blue line, right? So I want to I want to add a force that moves him on the z-axis. Alright, so how are we going to do that? Well, So I'm gonna access the rigid body's what do you call? I will be accessing its functions. So I'm gonna do RB. Just remember, RB is the name that we've given to the variable. Dot. And now you can already see there are a lot of add force. And I'm just gonna do add force. And parentheses and semicolon. It's giving me an error because add force expects a few parameters. So you can go for whichever one of these parameters in later on, but I'm just gonna be going through the one that I just explained, the one that'll make the most sense. So I just said we wanted to move on the z-axis, so that means we wanted to move 0 on the x-axis. So x, y, and z. That's how it's done. So this is the overload that we're gonna be using. So I wanted to move 0 on the x, 0 on the y, and I wanted to move how much on the z? Well, I'm gonna just put in speed. I wanted to move this much on this z-axis. And now if I were to save this and head over here, and let's just wait for it to load. If I come here and if I hit play, it dropped to the ground, and if I hit W, you can see it just launched in the forward direction. And just remember, it launched on the z-axis because in our code we have defined that we want it to move as much as we define in the inspector on the z-axis. But now there's one issue, which actually I should get into the next video because I think this video is getting pretty long and I don't want to stretch it out more than it should. Alright, and in the next video we're going to be learning a little bit more about a more complex topic, which I'm not going to name right now. And yeah, I'll see you there.